how you can insert rows into the table, how you can print the contents of a table, and so on. How you can write, update the value, how you can delete the rows, and so on. Okay, I will take, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes. Okay. For sure, I will increase the duration up to 12 minutes. Okay, so no worries. Okay, now here we are going to see how to create a table in the database. So for creating a table, we need to use a syntax called create table. Then you need to write the name of the table. Okay, so we are creating a patient table, and we need to define what are the columns of the table, then what is the data type of each column. At the end, we need to define the primary key of the table. Okay, so this is the table patient. So we wrote the name of the table. Then within the brackets, we are going to define all the columns, the data type, and constraints. Okay, so look, what is the first column here? The first column is patient ID, and the data type of patient ID is character. In SQL, in order to represent string type values, we are using two data types. Either we can use this data type character, or we can use another data type called variable character. Okay, so if the values of a column, if they are fixed length for all the, let's say for all the patients, if the value of patient ID or the length of patient ID for all the patient, it is fixed length, then we can use this data type called character. And here the argument of this data type is 4 in this example, which means that this is the maximum length of patient ID. Okay. And then if you look down, you can see how the values of patient ID P001, P007, P008, P009, and so on. That means the length of the patient ID is fixed for all the patients, and it is 4. Yes, the next quiz, it is based on this notebook. Okay, so now this is the use of this data type. After that, here we defined a constraint for this column. Constraint means that rule. So we defined not null constraint for this column, which means that the patient ID column must not have null values. That means there should be a value for patient ID column. Then again we defined one more constraint for this column. So the name of the constraint is called check constraint. Okay. So what is the check constraint? Here we are specifying what is the format of the values of patient ID. So we wrote like this: patient ID similar to this format. Okay. What is the format? It should start with P followed by 3 digits. Okay. So look, the first digit should be a digit between 0 and 9. The second digit, again it is between 0 and 9, and the third digit, again it is between 0 and 9. Okay, so we defined two rules or two constraints for the patient ID column. It should not be null, and the format of the patient ID, it should start with P followed by 3 digits, and the digits should be from 0 to 9. Then we are defining the second column. The second column is patient name, and here the data type of this column is variable character, which means that we know the length of the names, it should not be fixed. The length of the name can vary. So that's why we use the data type variable character. It is not fixed. Okay. And here you can see the argument of this data type is 20, which means that the maximum number of characters for this column should be 20. Then we defined a constraint or not null constraint. That means the values of the patient name column should not be null. Then we define a date of birth column, the date of birth of the patient. So the data type of date of birth is date, and here you can see again it is not null. The values of date of birth should not be null. Then the gender of the patient, and the gender of the patient either F or M. That's why here we use the data type character, and the number of characters that we need only one, either the letter F or the letter M. Okay. Then we defined the not null constraint. Again, we defined a check constraint for the gender column. So what we are checking here, we are checking the values of gender. If it is F or if it is M, that means if any other values are provided for the gender column, these values are not acceptable, or these values will not be stored inside the column. Then you can see the height column. So because it is the height, it will be a fractional number. And to define a fractional number here in SQL, we use a data type called decimal. And you can see the argument of this decimal is there are two arguments, 4 and 1. So 4 means the total number of characters. 1 means after the decimal point, how many digits will be there. Because we have a decimal point, that's why we used I said 4 characters. So there will be 4 characters in total in this column for one particular value, and 1 digit after the decimal point. Okay. And here you can see we defined a check constraint, and what is the rule here? The values must be greater than 0. Okay. Similarly, we defined the weight of the patient. Again, because it is a fractional number, we use the data type decimal, and to represent the weight of a patient, we need 4 characters including decimal point, and there will be 1 digit after the decimal point. Okay. And we define the check constraint here. That means the weight column must have values which are greater than 0. So these are the columns of the patient table: patient ID, patient name, date of birth, gender, height, weight. After that, we need to define the primary key of the table. Uh, when you define a column as a primary key, then the values of that column should be unique. Okay. So here we mentioned that patient ID is the primary key, which means that the values of the patient ID column should be unique. So this is the syntax, how to create a table in SQL. Okay. So
Doctor,
now we created the table. Yes, yes.
in the previous exam,
I cannot hear you.
I say the previous exam they didn't say or they didn't ask to create the table in SQL. We should memorize it or
Can you
what?
repeat? I didn't hear. Yes. They will give you the table structure, like they will give you the name of the table, the columns of the table. What
Yes,
you
but
need to memorize, the
I mean,
syntax, like create
I
table.
have to
The
memorize all that, or just that the the how to insert or how to update the table.
you have to memorize the syntax of create table, like how to define the data type of each column. Then if they mentioned any rule, then you need to know how to define a rule or constraint for each column, how to define primary key, and so on. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so now we created the table, but it is empty. We just created the structure of the table, like what are the column names, what are the rules of each column, what is the primary key of the table, and so on. Now we need to fill the table with data. We need to fill the table with many rows. So if you want to insert a row, then we need to use this insert statement. Here you can see insert into. Okay. Uh, I think I already recorded. Yes, it's already recorded. Okay, so insert into, then here we need to write the name of the table because we are going to insert rows into the patient table. Then we need to write what are the columns of this table. Okay, so this is the order of the columns, like patient ID, then patient name, then date of birth, birth, then gender, then you need to provide the values of those columns. Okay, so here you can see P1, it is the value of patient ID, then Thorndon is the value of patient name, then this is the value of date of birth, and F is the value of gender, 162.3, it is the value of height, and 71.6, it is the value of weight. Okay, so the order of the column name and the order of the values, it should be same. Okay, you have to follow the same order when you write the column name and when you write the column values. So just note that here we are using an insert statement, insert into, in order to insert a row into the table. Okay, so here run it. Okay, I didn't run the previous cell. Okay, we have to run from the first cell. Then you have to create the table, then you can insert the rows into the table. Okay, so we inserted many rows, and now if I want to print what are the columns of the table, we have to use a select statement. So we wrote select and then we wrote star, so it will print all the columns of the table. Then we need to write the from clause. So the rows to write the or want to table or arrange the rows of the table based on the values of patient ID, then we need to write the order by statement. Okay, so now you can see this is the output. So you can see the patient ID, the patient name, the date of birth, the gender, the height and weight of the patients. Now, if you look at the patient ID column, look, the values are in an order. Okay, P1, P7, P8, P9, P15, and so on. Because here we wrote order by statement, and the column that we wrote, it is patient ID. So based on the values of patient ID, the rows will be ordered. So do you understand how to make a table, how to insert a row into the table, and how you can get the rows from a table?
Yes, but Doctor,
Oh,
Yes, yes.
okay.
okay,
Yes. Uh-huh.
the create the table. I didn't understand. يعني I didn't memorize all that. يعني the time will.
Mm-hmm. You mean for the activity, for the quiz?
لا, no, I don't mean the quiz for the midterm.
Ah, for the midterm, you mean they will ask whether to create a table or not?
He will ask me yes to create the table.
It depends. I think in one of the previous semesters they were asking to write a syntax for creating the table, but I cannot say because I am not the one who prepared the question. But still, uh, you learn, and if they ask, you can write.
Just the
Uh,
syntax upset, صح?
just learn. I'm not sure in the MTA they will ask it or not. Okay. Okay. So now here we are going
I
to.
have one question.
Oh, okay.
Are we going to exam SQL in this week or the next week?
Next activity, not this week, because in the next support session I will explain one of the previous midterm exam. So I will not get time to discuss this. That's why I discuss now.
No, I mean, miss the activity.
In the
We will.
for this week's activity, SQL will not be there. I already sent you email that you will have only 1.4, the notebook 1.4, the one that we discussed before.
Okay, the activity of the SQL after the midterm, right?
Yes, yes, yes,
Okay, thank you.
yes. Okay. So now look the question. Uh, what did you add to make the output work with you? No, I don't know who asked this question. Haneen. Percentage tool to run the SQL. Here in this notebook, we are using this percentage because this is the notebook, Jupyter notebook. So if you are writing an SQL statement in this notebook, we need to indicate that this is an SQL statement. So to indicate this is statement as an SQL statement, we are using this percentage. Okay, and statement no need to add any. So if compilers, no need for this. Okay, okay. Now here register the details of a new female patient whose name was born 1st November 1982 and has been assigned a patient ID P98. What they are saying, they ask you to insert a new row, and for the new the patient name patient ID is P98. In order to insert a new row, we need to write insert into. Okay, then we wrote what are the columns that we need to add. So here in this question, they give you only 4 values of the columns or the values of 4 columns. So these are the columns: patient ID, patient name, date of birth, and gender. So when you write the column names, you just specify these column names. Okay. Then we wrote the values. The values are P98, then Kramer, and the date of birth, and the gender is F. Now we are checking whether this is added or not. Okay, so for that we wrote a select statement, select star from patient, where patient ID equal to P98. Okay, so if it is added, you can see that row as an output. If it is not added, you will not see that row as an output. Okay, so here it's already added. So you can see this is the row that we just added. P98 Kramer, this is the date of birth and this is the gender. And we didn't give values for height and weight for this particular patient. So we already added this row. Now we need to give a value for height and weight for this particular patient. So for that, here they are asking you, record the height and weight of this patient as 169.6 and 74.1 respectively. Okay, the height of the patient is 169.6 and the weight of the patient is 74.1. So we already inserted that row before. Now we are going to update the row. So if you want to update, then we need to use this statement, update table. Okay, so we are going to update this table, and which values we are going to update? The height and weight. So before you write the column names of height and weight, we need to write a keyword called set, because we are going to set new values for these two columns. Okay, so the height of the patient is 169.6 and the value of the weight is 74.1, and it will be updated only for this particular patient. So we have to write a condition. So we have to use a where clause, and then we wrote the condition for patient ID P98. So only for that patient, height and weight values will be updated. Okay. So we already updated, and now we are going to check whether the values are updated by writing the select statement. Okay. So here you can see, yes, it is already updated. For the patient P98, the height is 169.6 and the weight is 74.1. Do you understand how to write an update statement?
Yes, miss.
Okay. The last thing, how you can delete a row from the table. If you want to delete a row from the table, we need to use delete from. So delete from, then you need to write the name of the table, then for which row you want to delete. So you have to write that as a condition. So again, in order to write the condition, we have to use the where clause, and here we wrote the condition. That means we delete one row if the row's patient ID is P98. Okay, so that row will be deleted. Okay, so we have to use the delete from statement. So it will be deleted. and here we are checking whether the row is deleted or not by writing this select statement. Okay, so look, now that row is deleted, so only you can see the column heading, but there is no values for that particular patient. Okay, so these are the main statements that you need to learn. How you can create a table, how you can insert a row into the table, how you can get the rows from a table, how to write an update statement, and how to write a delete statement. If you have any doubts in these statements, please let me know.